You're listening to the Today's Eden podcast, episode 18.
This is where the struggles are real, the callings are heavy, the kids are sticky. We come together because it takes a village, and this is your tribe. When I think about what kind of friend I am, I would say that my friends could depend on me for anything, but that's someone I know. How far would I go to help a stranger or somebody that I just met? Tricia Seaman is an oncology nurse, and she is always at the service of others. But one day, serving others took on a whole new meaning, and she met a patient on her floor, also named Tricia, aka Trish, a single mom with an 8-year-old son who had been diagnosed with cancer and had no family to turn to. Her cancer was terminal, and with a short time to live, she asked Tricia to do something for her that would completely change their lives. I am always saying that I want today's Eden to encourage us to get back to that it takes a village mindset, and Tricia's open heart is a perfect example of just that. I'm so excited for you guys to hear this episode. Let's get to it. So before we get into your story and kind of the main reason I asked you on, could you tell us a little bit about your family and what life kind of looked like before you guys met Trish, the other Tricia, and things kind of changed? Could you tell us a little bit about you guys before that?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we were just a basic American family, and we were raised in 4 very busy kids, 3 daughters and a son. We live in central Pennsylvania. We had felt very led to become foster to adopt parents. And so we had started to go through that process probably a year to year and a half before we actually met Trish. So that was kind of I won't say it was on the back burner. It was something that we were working on, but that it's quite a process. Get through all the paperwork and the clearances, and we had some starts and stops. We'd started with one agency, and then we just weren't getting anywhere. So we actually transferred our things to the Bear Foundation, and then till we got all through that, it really took a good calendar year.
Yeah.
Just with our schedules and everything too.
Right.
So life was busy. Life was fun. It was good, but we definitely felt like we wanted to add to the family.
And then life kind of threw you guys for a loop when Tricia came into the picture and kind of fell into your life. And she was admitted to the hospital that you were working at.
Yes, that's correct.
So can you tell us a story about how you guys met and how you ended up becoming a huge part of each other's lives?
Sure. So I'm an oncology nurse, and I was working, just doing my normal shift. I was working 3 to 11 that night, went in to get my assignment, got a little background information on her. And I can recall that when I heard her scenario, just the fact that she was a single parent and that she had already been diagnosed with the liver cancer, my heart just kind of sunk a little bit. Yeah. Just felt, just not only from a nurse, but from a mom, right. From a mom's perspective, just felt very sad for her. She had gone in for an exploratory lap surgery that day, where basically the doctors were going to go in, look around inside with a camera, and take some tissue samples to see why her symptoms were so bad, when, the doctors had felt that the cancer that was present on her liver was just sitting there. It wasn't doing anything, and it was something that they were watching.
Okay.
So that's when I met her.
Wow. Yeah. And from the story that I had heard, you weren't exactly her nurse the entire time that she was there either.
Not at all. In fact, that 3 to 11 shift was the only time I was assigned to care for her on that admission. Mm-hmm. She was there on our unit. I just simply kept going back in and just checking in on her. Yeah. Which that's not unusual for, the demographic of patients that we take care of. We get very attached to them, and A lot of the staff just form relationships with the patients. They feel like they have another family in us. We all very concerned about our patients. So just every time I was there, I'd go back in, say hi, just see how things were going, see if she heard anything, ask about Wesley. And I just really enjoyed talking with her. Yeah. She was just a very, very strong woman for all she was enduring.
Yeah, that's a lot. I can imagine. I can't imagine being a single mother and then having to go through something like that. Was her son with her the whole time, or where was he at the hospital?
No, she had some coworkers who were kind of taking turns with him throughout her admissions since she had been diagnosed. Yeah. Just based on the hours that I was working and the fact that he was in school, I never actually saw him throughout her hospitalization. Some of the other staff members had, because he had been in a few times to visit. But I never got.
Oh, that's tough. So, and then it wasn't until the last day, or the day that she was about to get discharged, that she kind of asked you a question that pretty much changed the course of you and your family's lives. So could you tell us about that?
Yeah. I mean, did you ever have one of those defining moments? I mean, you just never quite know when those defining moments are going to come. Yeah. You think about that when you're a young person choosing a major in college, or when you get engaged and you're, planning a wedding. To me, those were defining moments up to this point in my life, right. And when you give birth to your children and this and that, but I had no idea that particular day was going to be a defining moment. Right. Oh my gosh. And so I saw on the board that she was going to be discharged. So I went in to her room, just gave a little knock, and she was sitting in there with a social worker. And the room just felt dark. It felt heavy. I knew I walked in on something major, and I quickly wanted to excuse myself, and I was going to come back later just to say goodbye. But she stood up immediately when I walked in, and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to interrupt you. Just wanted to say goodbye. I'll come back later." She said, "No, I need you to stay." And she walked towards me and she said, just as composed could be. She said, "The biopsies came back and I am terminal and I'm going to die." And of course, I just gave her a hug. I said, "I am just so incredibly sorry." And, I said, I'm going to keep you in my prayers. And she said, she went right on to the next question. She said, "No, when I need to ask you something." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "When I die, will you and your husband raise my son?" And I just stood there. Yeah. Like,
yeah.
Really? I said, "Oh, Trish," I said, "please take some time with this. You have just been given some huge, huge information. Take some time with this." And I think I even said something to the effect of, I knew there was a dad. I knew there was a biological dad. So, I said, seek some legal counsel. Really, I just wanted her not to make a rash decision. Right. And I guess I was assuming that it was a rash decision. When knowing what I know now, it wasn't. Right. But at the time, I just wanted her to take time to think through this. Yeah. So I excused myself quickly, gave her a hug again, and went outside. I just didn't know what to say. Yeah. And neither did the social worker. The social worker just trying to, how when you're in a situation that you'd just rather not be there at the time. That was kind of what I was getting from her body language. She was just busy shuffling papers and thinking, "Oh my goodness." Yeah. But I left the room then, and we never exchanged contact information, which is the thing that, to me, I still can't quite get over that we never even, like, I don't know. I think she was just so overwhelmed with what was going on that, I said to her once, I said, you never even asked for my phone number. And she said, no, what was I thinking, And she said, I wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking about the details. So
So
that was that.
what was going through your mind when she asked you?
Well, someone recently asked me that question, and I think that at the time there was so much, what was complete shock.
Right.
But I think, my mind just started to race, like, is this God's way of answering our prayer?
Yeah.
And yet, the thought of bringing another child into our home was exciting for the family. But yet I was so torn and mourning for her, because I was like, I don't want it to be like this.
Right.
I don't want someone else to be suffering for our joy.
Yeah.
I didn't want that. I didn't want it to be that the mother was going to die so that we would take her child. That was not, I kind of was arguing with God, I think, a little bit, like, okay, if this is your plan, I don't like this plan, because this means that this mom is going to pass away. And I certainly don't want that for her.
Yeah.
So it was very conflicting, I think. Very conflicting.
Yeah. And I think that I had seen something where it was either you or your husband had said that looking forward, they couldn't consciously take on Wesley without taking on Trish, and being able to say, like, we loved you, but we couldn't take care of your mom. And so that brings me to the next question, that you guys chose to get to know them. And
Yes.
so how did you come to that decision, and then what did that look like for you guys?
Well, after I shared with my husband kind of what transpired, he said, I think the most important thing right at this moment, whether or not this ever materializes, is just that we reach out to her. And I knew enough that she didn't have a whole lot. She didn't have a lot of resources. She was living in a very low income situation, very poor situation, didn't have family to step in. And so we just wanted to basically initially reach out just to extend a helping hand. We wanted to make sure she had enough groceries and that she could get her medicines and get to her appointments. And, we just felt very led to just come alongside her, regardless of what was going to happen with Wesley. And to us, that was a secondary at that point.
Right.
So, yeah, we got to know her, and we invited her up to the house. Now, I'm sure your listeners will say, well, how on earth did you get back in contact with her?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Well, she had this great big giant dog, Molly.
Okay.
And I had, in the times that I spoke with Trish, had recalled, it was kind of a light bulb that came on. I remembered, the dog is with one of our physical therapists who I knew. I wasn't necessarily friends with her, but I knew her and I knew how to get in contact with her. So I reached out to Robin, and I said, Robin, I basically just spilled it all out. This is what happened. This is what she asked me. And she said, yes, I have the dog. I have all of her contact information. And actually, Robin had been going by the apartment to take things to her and check in on her. And she said, I think we should make a visit. And so it kind of went from there.
Wow, you guys really, that's so, even, not even going further than this part of the story, but just thinking about how your husband, and the physical therapist just kind of went above and beyond, and you guys were just reaching out and caring for her, knowing that she didn't have anybody else. That in itself alone to me is amazing and super selfless, because I know today it's really hard for a lot of us to get out of our comfort zone, our routines, to find excuses. We have this and that and we don't have time, and so that's so amazing that you guys reached out to her like that.
Well, I think when it's placed right in front of you, you react, and thankfully, we reacted, and we wanted to help. We really wanted to help. So we started to spend time together, and through the spring of 2014, she was back in the hospital several times. She started her what they call palliative chemo, which was chemotherapy designed to try to keep that cancer as controlled as possible. It was already very widespread, but they were trying to buy her as much time as possible and control her symptoms. And unfortunately, the first type that she was on, she reacted very terribly to, ended up in the hospital. And so again, Wesley was with coworkers and back and forth. But this time, Robin and I were there for her when she was in the hospital. And we were listed as her contact persons. And I was obviously there working. I did not allow myself to be assigned to her because I was already too close to the situation. So, but I started just kind of functioning as her next of kin. Yeah. And everybody that I worked with knew the situation, and they were just so amazing. Everybody there at Pinnacle Health just went above and beyond. Once full knowing Tricia's whole situation, they stepped up. That's awesome. Big time. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So eventually we got to May, right after Mother's Day, which she had spent Mother's Day with us that year. And we had such a beautiful time. We actually brought them up for the weekend and organized through a family friend some pictures, because we were fairly certain, based on what doctors were telling us, that this was her last Mother's Day. And we wanted to make it special. So we took pictures and just did all kinds of just special things together. And the thing that I'll never forget is she brought me gifts. How she got out to buy them, I don't know that I ever actually asked her that, because her legs were so swollen that moving was hard for her. And she brought me a gift from Wesley, which was a little wind chime, a little bird wind chime, because in our conversation she knew that I liked birds. I enjoyed birds. And so she brought me a wind chime from him, and then from her, a beautiful little, it was kind of like a little decorative solar light with two birds on it, driftwood wrapped around it. And it's designed to be put outside, but that is never going outside. It is on my piano, safe and sound, in a nice dry place, because I don't want anything to happen to it. I treasure that. It's what a beautiful gesture. Yeah. So we had a great day, and I think for us, that Mother's Day just kind of sealed it, that we were in it for the duration. No matter what was going to happen, we were going to be alongside of her. And when I took her home that night, which is about an hour's drive from our home, I called Robin immediately. I was with her all weekend, and her physical condition was not good. I was lifting her in and out of chairs, and there is no way that she could be taking care of herself and her child. And it was just excruciating leaving her at that apartment. I said to her, I don't want to leave you here. And she said, I don't want you to leave me here. And I said, honey, we're going to try to figure something out. So I called Rob, and we actually got permission from Trish to call her doctor the next day, and her doctor had us bring her back to the hospital. They were fairly certain at that time that they thought this was the end for her. However, thankfully it wasn't. But at that point, a major decision needed to be made. Yeah. She needed to go to a nursing home or something. The doctors would not discharge her home. It wasn't safe. Yeah. So that was the turning point of our decision that, she come with us and Wesley come with us. And so that's what happened.
What were some of the things that you and your husband had to kind of let go of in order to bring Wesley and his mother into your home? Or what are some of the things that you guys kind of had to consider, maybe?
Well, we had space. That wasn't really an issue. We had a room that was originally to be a dining room, never was a dining room. It was always a toy room. And our kids were at the age that they certainly weren't using it as such anymore. So we decided to take that room. We were working with hospice and got all the necessary equipment in, hospital bed and bedside table, just, adaptive equipment, things like that. He just did such a good job. He put up privacy panels for her so that she had her own little space. And so that was one of the things, just, a physical space for her. We set up our son's room, Noah. We got them bunk beds. So the room would be, equipped. We got extra furniture for Wesley. Unfortunately, or fortunately now looking back, Trish and Wesley from the very beginning of Wesley's life had always slept together. She was a victim of domestic violence. And when Wesley was quite small, due to substance abuse on the part of his biological dad, Trish would hold him to keep him quiet. She didn't want him to cry because that would cause agitation. So she just started this pattern where she basically just held him and took him with her wherever she went, and she would lay on the couch or lay in another room with him to keep him quiet. So he had never slept without her, which was a huge concern because I just didn't know how we were going to navigate that. Right. The sicker she got at first, he slept right in with her. I had two people in a little twin hospital bed, and there he was with his pillows and his buddies and right next to mommy. So I would tuck them both in every night. I would go down, say prayers, and kiss them both on the head and tuck them in, and just prayed. I think that was my biggest concern is what if something happened to her and he was there, right. Or what if it got to a point where I had to physically remove him from that bed? I did not want to be in that position. Yeah. Thankfully, we had time to work with that. And those were big challenges. Yeah. And we worked with a counselor and with Trish because it was hard for her to separate from him, that we got to the point where, we had him sleeping in his bed Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, he was down with her. And it was so hard. Oh, cry. He cried and cried and cried. And it was heart-wrenching. Yeah. There we all stood as adults in the hall just weeping. Yeah. Because it was another level of separation that we knew was coming. Right. But we had to, for her and for him, get them to the point that, his comfort with going to bed at night wasn't next to her. Yeah. So that was a huge challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
She and I may share the same name, but that's about it. We are about as different a people as you could possibly. I've always been very, very orderly, very neat, very tidy, very task-driven. Trish was a complete free spirit. If dinner was at 8:00 and it consisted of a pack of cookies, pack of gummies, it was all good. She, it was just it. And believe me, he definitely had plenty to eat, but he tells me to this day, I was raised on processed food. What I wouldn't give for some processed food. because we cook here. We are just kind of your typical central Pennsylvania meat and potatoes kind of family, And he was not used to that.
Yeah.
Not used to that. That and the insane amount of stuff that she had. Oh my heavens. Just boxes. And we went and cleaned out her apartment. That could have been a book all on its own. Just that whole scenario of cleaning out the apartment, because she had two parents who had passed away, and she had been living in their home. So she took as much of their things because it meant a lot to her to have their things with her, and took it to every apartment that she lived in. And it was just so much stuff. And so she moved as much as she could into our home, decorations and all. My kitchen became very different. The bathroom became very different. I would come home from work and look around and be like, oh my goodness. That was a challenge.
Yeah.
That was a challenge for someone who liked not a lot of things sitting around. You couldn't even see my refrigerator. It was wall-to-wall magnets and pictures and decor and, it. And, Ashley, those are little things.
Yeah.
And it took me to a better place of knowing that those are little things. Those are insignificant things in life, or, what my house looks like. Of course, I want to take good care of it and keep it clean, but, really, I don't need to sweat that.
Yeah.
I don't need to sweat the small stuff. And I'd give anything to have her and all her clutter back.
Yeah.
It was oh my, wall to wall in that little room. She made the most of it, but she was happy.
Yeah.
She loved it. She said she'd never had such a beautiful space to be in, and enjoyed where she was. So.
How are your kids dealing with her being here, also moving in, and Wesley moving in, and her stuff?
It was quite a change. And I think for the children, the hardest thing was he had no rules. He had no rules. He had no routine. And they did.
Yeah.
And part of that, and honestly, I think part of that was the fact that she was so sick. Right. There she was by herself. I think she was always a very free spirit with him, but I think once she became ill, she just did the best she could to manage him, but letting him sit for hours on his gamepad just seemed like a good idea because she just couldn't do anything else. Yeah. Prior to being sick, he has such good memories of, they would walk every day after school. They would take Molly for a walk and go to the park, and she did things with him. But when she became ill, she just couldn't do that anymore. Yeah. So the hardest thing was, they'd stay up half the night. She'd sleep a lot through the day and then be up at night, and he was right alongside her, and they would sit in there half the night awake while other children needed to go to bed. Yeah. When we'd have meals, he wouldn't eat the same things. And so we were trying to accommodate him the best we could. It was a blending process. It really was. But, as she became more ill and unable to parent at really very limited capacity, till towards the end, she was sleeping so much that I was taking care of him. Yeah. And he every day would ask, every morning we would go through the same thing. I want Mommy to do it. And every day I would say the same thing. If Mommy could do it, she would do it, but she just can't right now. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to fill in, I'm here to help you. And so then he would appease and go onward. And I'd have him go in and give her a kiss and a hug before he'd go to school. And we would go onward. And so the more I did things, the more he got used to my routines. And, I would try to introduce fruits and I would still give him the stuff he loved, but I would also try to, get in there, found out he really loved apples. He loved strawberries, and try to get some healthy things in there too. He loved playing with the children. I mean, my two older girls were, my oldest daughter was a senior in high school, and then my second daughter was a sophomore. So they were kind of doing their own thing. It was mostly my two younger children, Emma, and then Noah and Wesley, who spent a lot of time together. And Emma was just fantastic with him. He just loved playing with Emma and Noah, and they were just very good with him.
So what did the last few months look like for you guys, and how was that?
It was hard.
Yeah.
It was really hard. We went through a spurt of time there in the summer months. She came in May. The summer months, she improved greatly.
Yeah.
And not that her cancer was any better. It's just that we were on top of the symptoms. And with good food and rest and the ability to not have to worry about anything but just taking care of herself. She knew we had Wesley, and we were watching him, and we were entertaining him, and she could just rest and just enjoy time with him. He would go in and sit with her, and she'd read to him. They would just, cuddle up, and that was good. She got to the point where she was just full of energy. We were doing all kinds of things. Anything she wanted to do, we were doing it. We went to the beach. We had her in New York City 2 times to see shows. Every day she wanted to go to Walmart, like all the time. And she was a shopper. She enjoyed shopping. Robin would still come up, do things with them, bring the dog up. It was just a great summer, in terms of the fact that I feel like she really lived life to the fullest. And she said that as well. And she just, I didn't want that to end.
Yeah.
But I knew that it would, because, the CAT scan showed that the cancer was still just as bad. We were just basically covering up the symptoms with medicines. So by fall, once the kids went back to school, she really slowed down. Most of her days were spent sleeping all day. I would wake her up for medicines. And I just knew that we were getting to a point where there was going to be some decisions to be made. It was never our intent to keep her here until she passed away. And she knew that going into this, that when we got to the point that she required somebody with her 24 hours a day, that we were going to try to make another arrangement. We were going to utilize a hospice residence or something. And so that's what happened. Got to the point where I was up all night with her. We couldn't control her pain. We had her on IV pain medication through the hospice, but I couldn't adjust it. Even though I was the nurse, I wasn't in a position that I could take that into my own hands. I was the family member, and I was watching her suffer at that point, and I could not care for 5 children, be here 24 hours a day with her, and continue my job. It wasn't possible.
Yeah.
I couldn't stop working, and it was a very difficult decision to transfer her onward, but it needed to happen. Yeah. She spent a brief time back at the hospital where I worked, just to get her pain under control, and then eventually she went to the hospice residence, which was a lovely, lovely place, and she did very much like it there. We had lots of lovely friends who would help take Wesley down, because it was about an hour from here, unfortunately. So we would try to get him down a couple times a week to visit her. I would stop after work and visit her every time I worked. And we just did our best to be there for her. That we missed her and she missed us.
Yeah. Yeah. how did Wesley handle being away from her like that?
It was a slow transition because, you know, by fall she really wasn't able to be up doing much. So, like I said, it was a slow operation. And initially he visited 3 or 4 times a week. And then as she declined, it went to 2 times a week. And then finally, the very last week, it was just once. She and I talked, the time that we had together was intense time of getting as much information as I could get. Our days together weren't spent just leisurely. A lot of times, she and I had time together. We were talking about important things. I wanted to know everything I could know about her. She wanted to know everything she could know about us. I remember one night, Dan took all the kids to the drive-in movies, and she and I sat with stacks of photo albums. And we just went through everything. She wanted to see all of my kids as babies and toddlers and going through mountains of albums and our wedding. And then we did the same for her. She took me through Wesley's entire babyhood, what he liked, what he did, what he was like. And, most parents that are in my situation don't have that luxury. If they've adopted their child as an older child or even as a toddler, they don't have the privilege of being able to ask the birth mother in a lot of cases, So I'm just so happy. I know the answers to the questions. Well, what did I do when I was, your mom told me that you just loved this particular toy, or you just loved, this or that. And so, and I have all of the books and the things that she made for him. So that's a blessing.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, most kids don't get those answers that they want to know when they get older. So that's going to be very comforting to him, I'm sure.
And I can remember one day we were driving in the car, and I said, Trish, I just got to know what you want. And I literally stopped the car, and we sat there and talked. And I said, when this is all done and you pass on, you got to tell me what you want this to look like at the end. Do I bring him? Do I keep him? Do you want a service? Do you want... I didn't know.
Yeah.
I needed all of those answers. And I sat there and just cried and cried and cried. And she sat there just as stoic as could be. And she did not want him there when she could no longer interact with him. She did not want him there to see her that way. She wanted him to remember her as mommy. And she said, when he says, I don't want to see her that way anymore, no matter what I say to you, do not bring him back. And the very last time that he saw her, he wouldn't sit next to her. He sat on my lap. And she was not real aware. So, I think she knew. She tried to talk to him. And we left that evening, and he said, Tricia, I don't want to see my mom that way anymore. And I said, okay, that's all right. Mommy understands that, and I do too. And he said, I want to remember Mommy like Mommy was. Yeah. And I said, that's okay. And then he says in the next breath, will you take me to the circus sometime? And I said, sure. And of course, we went to the circus and had great seats. But that's how he dealt with his grief at that time. You could be talking about something very heavy one minute, and the next minute, when we go to Walmart, will you get me that Lego set with that in it? That's how he was at 8 years old, And so as he put his little headphones on in the back seat that night, I just wept the whole way home, because I knew that was the last time that he would see her.
Yeah.
And she passed away that following Sunday, and I was there. I went and stayed with her the night before, and at that point in time, she was very delirious, but she was very aware of our presence there, very aware of my presence there. And it was actually Robin that was with her when she passed. I had gone home that morning, and Robin took over, and I was with Wesley when he got the news, which is right where I needed to be.
Yeah.
It's where I needed to be. And when I left her, I said to her, she became very agitated when she knew I was leaving, and I just wrapped my arms around her, and I held her hands, and I said, this is not goodbye. This is just, I'm going to see you later. But I have to go home and take care of Wesley because that's what you asked me to do. Yeah. She nodded her head. And tears came for both of us because I just wanted to hold her forever. Yeah. And I knew it was her time to go. So I went home and I just hugged that little boy and just loved him all I could love him. And I told him that, that today was probably the day that Mommy was going to go to heaven. And so he was prepared for that phone call. And, at the very, very end, before she passed away, she called his name. And Robin called and she said, she's calling out for him. Should we put him on the phone? And I said, yeah. So we told him what was going on, and we put everything on speaker and said, listen, Mommy isn't going to be able to talk to you the way Mommy talks to you, but she just needs to hear your voice to know it's okay to go to heaven. Yeah. And I said, honey, if there is anything that you want to say to your Mommy, she hears you right now. And we put it on speaker, and Ashley, it was just the most heart-wrenching thing I've ever seen. He said, Mommy, I love you. I love you so much. And he just sobbed. And we were sobbing. And we passed the phone around and told her how much we loved her, and that we were going to take good care of him. And we tried to sing to her a little bit because she loved that. We couldn't hardly get words out.
Yeah.
And it was literally 10 minutes after we hung up, Robin said she passed.
Oh, wow.
10 minutes. We no sooner had everybody settled, and we just hugged and cried, knowing that this was the end. And it was about 10 minutes later that Robin called back and said she passed.
Wow.
I'm so glad Robin was with her. It was so fitting. Part of me wanted to be right there too, but I was doing what she asked me to do. Yeah. And so I can rest easy in knowing that that was her wish for him not to be there, and that we were surrounding him, and that was what she wanted. Yeah. I just wanted to honor her. Whatever it is she wanted us to do, we did. It's a heart-wrenching. Oh,
yes, I know. You're crying and I'm crying. So how has this changed you guys, and how do you think it's changed your kids along this process?
Well, I think that we look at the big picture. I'd like to think that we learned, and that the children have learned, that it's okay to step outside yourself, and that such amazing blessings can come when you're serving and giving to other people. And we love Wesley like he's always been here. It feels like he's always been a part of our family.
So how is Wesley doing now that having how do you I guess because I don't have a kid that has gone through grief, and I wouldn't know what that looks like, moving forward. Is it something that you can, I imagine, still comes up, but is it still a daily struggle for him, or is he?
Uh, not really. We had talked with Trish at length as to what our plan would be after she passed on. We had him in counseling. We just actually, and I'll say quote unquote, graduated. He was in counseling from the time she had passed on. Just, we wanted to make sure that we did everything we could, just, to have a professional set of eyes on him, that if there was anything we could do or anything that was concerning. But he has just grieved so appropriately and naturally. Like I said, I think it helped that the transition was so gradual that he was grieving, I think, all along the way as she was becoming sicker. And by the time she actually passed, his daily life didn't really change too much because we were already taking care of him for a good 2 months before she actually passed away. So for me, and in nursing, grief is not something that you can make silent. We all grieve. It comes in waves. There are times now that we all cry, remembering her. But she is a part of life here, even today. We don't have any problems talking about mommy. We love to, if something comes up that reminds us, we say it. And he's free to say it, And I think that is just such a healthy and important way for him to know that we're not trying to erase what happened. We're going to embrace it. And my thing for him, and I've said this to him many times, Wesley, this is just an absolutely tragic thing that you have gone through as such a young person. But now this is a choice. You take this. You take this situation in your life and you use this as you grow to help somebody else. You embrace that. You are stronger. You are stronger for this. This is so sad. I would never want this to happen to anybody, but this is making you who you will become. And I said to him early on, I said, children are blessed by having mommies and daddies, but you are extra special because you got two sets. The really special little boys and girls get extra mommies and daddies. So that's kind of how we look at it.
That's amazing. I'm just blown away by how much you took care of them and how much how well you've handled the situation and the things that you've showed him, that out of tragedy and there's blessings and there's things, to be learned, and just amazing. And just a very touching, amazing story. So I'm so glad. And I'm glad that I feel like, we're just like you said, we're given the things that we are given to make us who we are. And I feel like this happened to you because you were going to nurture him well, as well as he needed to be, and to share this story as honorably as it needed to be shared, for others like me to be encouraged by it. For me, it was kind of something that made me realize how I can be more open-minded to serving, to, not think about myself so much, to be willing to open my home. What does that look like? How can I, be there for others? And so, thank you so much for doing that for Wesley and Tricia, and that's amazing.
It was a blessing. And, she wanted this story to be told. She was very much an integral part of wanting to share this. Mm-hmm. And so I feel very good about, I feel very, very good about the book. I feel that she would be very honored and pleased by it because she wanted that shared. She said, this is a miracle
Yeah.
that this all happened. Miracles aren't to be kept to ourselves. They're to be shared with other people. And so I want to continue to honor her memory through everything that we do. Do it well. Do it with utmost respect to her memory. I want Wesley to always know that, he's very proud of the book.
Oh, I was going to ask.
Yes. A lot of people ask me if he's read it. I actually read it to him, which was just a fascinating process, because he was like, oh yeah, I remember that. And it was so interesting for him to hear my perspective on some things. He said to me, I had no idea that you felt that way. Even at a young age, I had no idea that you would have thought that, or that you felt that. Or I think it gave him a perspective from how we were feeling going through it. He knew how he felt going through it. So it was interesting. Now, I did not read him the end of the book. He's a little boy, and I think we'll wait on that part. When he's a little bit older, and I feel that he's ready to hear the details of, some of her final moments, then, we'll read it.
Yeah.
But he read all up into the end, and so it was good, and he loved it. Yeah. He loved it. He was very, very entertained by it and laughing, remembering some of the situations. So.
And your book is called God Gave Me You, just so the listeners know, and they can find it on your site and on Amazon too, I think.
Yes. Amazon.com. And my author site is www.triciaseaman.com. And there's links to the book. There's also some nice family photos on there of all of us together. The book actually was just released April 4th, 2017 in paperback. So it sells for like around $10 on Amazon, which is great. I hope this gets it into the hands of, more folks that just need a little uplift. I've received comments from people in so many different situations, people who are cancer survivors, people currently going through cancer, adoptive families, adults who lost a parent as a child. I mean, there are just so many folks that relate to this story on so many different levels. My prayer is that it just is a tool that ministers to them, helps just kind of, make it a little bit easier for whatever they're going through, and just give them some comfort, hope, and encouragement.
Yeah. And what a blessing that book is going to be for Wesley to have forever, to have and to look back on, and to be ministered by his own story and to remember. So that's an amazing gift for him as well.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, is there anything that I didn't ask you, or that no one else has asked you about you and your family's journey, or the story that you feel you'd want to share?
I really don't. I can't think of anything else. You were extremely thorough.
I mean, thank you. I felt like this was such a heavy and important and special story that I wanted to make sure that I just honored it well, that I honored your family well, that, that the message and the heart behind it was out there, and I just felt like it was an amazing story. So,
well, thank you. I really appreciated your questions. They were all just so well thought out and so thorough. And I think it hopefully gave your listeners a nice overview of what happened and some of the ins and outs of what this story looked like, and hopefully encourage them to read the book and to hear all of the sometimes hilarious details, because that's really who she was. Oh my, she was so funny, and Wesley is so much the same way. just larger than life.
Yeah.
Larger than life.
It's so beautiful. So at the end of each interview, I always ask 3 questions.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask you, what is the most influential book that you've read?
That is a tough question. Well, I'd have to say one of my favorites is Miracles from Heaven. That's one of everybody's favorites. That's it. It's just a great, great book.
Yeah.
I just really enjoyed it, and obviously enjoyed seeing the movie as well.
And would there be a book, now I'm curious, would there be a book that would be beneficial for people going through a certain situation that could help them guide, a child with a loss, losing a parent or going through grief? Was there any resource that you guys used?
Oh, I'm trying to think. There really wasn't any kind of specific book that we used with him. In his counseling, he drew a lot of pictures. He has an entire 3-ring binder of pictures that were guided through. I mean, for his personality, he's a very loves arts and crafts, and that seemed to be something that really helped him. I think my advice to any family that's going through helping a child that's going through grief is key in on the things that really that are really their giftings. For Wesley, he's a great little artist. He loves to work with his hands. For some children it might be music, for some it may be reading, and we really kind of keyed in on that whole drawing out kind of thing. And his counselor worked a lot with him on drawing pictures, and I'll tell you, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and his pictures in his binder are worth 1,000 words. Just drawing out. She would give him kind of a lead-in sentence, when this happened, this is how I felt, or so that was I think really helpful for him. But I asked him just a little bit ago, because I spoke to a group of children who had been through kind of a traumatic situation. And I said to Wesley, I said, in talking to these kids, what is the thing that helped you the most through this situation, through this whole journey that you've been on with losing your mom and, getting a new family? And I said, what's the one thing, if you could list one thing? And he said, having a family. Having a family helped me the very most. Not being alone. That was his answer.
I bet that just broke your heart and filled your heart out at the same time.
It did. And of course I started to cry.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to cry again. Sometimes he said, no, I'm going to say this. Don't cry. I know you're going to cry. You cry at everything. Yeah, he laughs. He laughs.
So if you could empower women in one way, what would it be?
Don't set limitations for yourself. Don't underestimate yourself. Know that you were born with a unique set of giftings. And, if you feel led in your heart to do something, do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Don't forget to love. Don't forget to reach out. Don't forget to embrace other people. You were made uniquely, beautifully, and wonderfully you. Yeah. And don't forget, if you're a woman who has a husband or a boyfriend or a second half, they were given to you for a reason. And embrace them. It's not about It is not about who is in charge. It's about working as a team and rowing the boat together in the same direction.
If you could tell your younger self one thing, assuming that she would listen, what would it be?
Oh, I would say don't sweat the small stuff.
Yeah.
In my 20s and even in my early 30s, I sweated the small stuff big time. I would go back to those early years of thinking I had to have everything just perfect. And I would sit down and relax a little bit more, put my feet up, read a book, go for more walks, spend more time with my toddlers in the mud.
Yeah.
Outside in the sandbox. That's what I would do, Ashley.
Yeah.
Just those little moments are the big moments.
Wow, what a story. And I'm so grateful for Tricia to taking the time out and sharing that with us today. If you want to check out the show notes page for this episode, you can find that at todayseden.com/podcasts, podcasts/018. So todayseden.com/podcast/018. And there you can find her website and also a link to her book, God Gave Me You, where she goes in more detail about her and Tricia's experience. I have a huge announcement, and that is that Today's Eden podcast is going to be now releasing a new episode every week. I'm so excited. So instead of every other week, we're now going to be releasing an episode every week, and I am so grateful to those who have shared an episode, reviewed this podcast, commented about how they loved an episode or how much it touched them or encouraged them. And if you've reviewed, subscribed, commented, all those things, I'm so grateful to you. Oh my gosh. And I'm so excited for this moving forward. And I hope you guys continue to listen and give me your feedback. The quote I want to leave you with today is more of a statement from somebody who has experienced grief. And it says, if you know someone who has lost a very important person in their life and you're afraid to mention them because you think you may make them sad by reminding them that they died, you're not reminding them. They didn't forget that they died. What you're reminding them of is that you remembered that they lived. And that is a great, great gift. Thank you guys so much for listening, and I can't wait for you to hear the next episode next week.